New South Wales parliamentary inquiry is recommending Sydney's controversial lockout laws be removed from the CBD but remain in King's Cross in an effort to strengthen the city's nighttime economy. The report has found a ban on entering city venues after 1:30 a.m. should be lifted. It wants the ban on last drinks after 3 a.m. and shots after midnight scrapped as well. And it wants an extension of bottle shop trading hours from 10 p.m. until midnight from Monday to Saturday. The report has recommended another review of those laws be held in 12 months, specifically as well for King's Cross. It's calling for better lighting and transport options for the night spot as well, of course, where 2 people were killed in coward punch attacks in 2014.
But Sydney is not the same city it was in 2014. We believe we've evolved, and it's now time to take stock and take proactive steps to stimulate Sydney's nighttime economy while continuing to prioritise safety.
We really need to get the balance right to make sure that we don't have a saturation of venues all next to each other, and that means looking at planning and licensing laws to make sure that we are supporting diversity, but we're not creating a saturation of venues. That is what led to what happened in 2014. We had venue next to venue where the activity that occurred was vertical drinking. People were drinking too much with other people who were drinking too much, and that spilled out onto the streets. So we need to make sure we've got the right planning controls in place, absolutely, and we obviously hope the government will look at that.
There is still, though, some opposition to winding back these laws. Earlier I spoke to Dr Preisz, head of the emergency department at St Vincent's Hospital in King's Cross, Sydney.
I think the opening 2 statements are very strong, that public safety is paramount and that alcohol does cause harms. And I think government would be very thoughtful about those in interpreting the remaining statements. And we obviously are very concerned about anything that would change, particularly the late closure, the 3 a.m. closure, but also the sales of after-hours sales or late night sales through bottle shops. And we've got a lot of evidence that shows that is very likely to result in harms, and we would be very concerned about that.
What's the evidence and what sort of harm, what sort of incidents are we talking about that you and your colleagues deal with?
Sure. Before these laws came into effect, we regularly saw young people assaulted, seriously assaulted, not minor things, but very seriously assaulted. We had patients who died. We had terrible tragedies that we saw every week here in the hospital. And since they came into force, that literally stopped. We still see patients, we still see some injuries, but nothing like what we saw before. We've got a lot of evidence from local evidence and overseas evidence that clearly links alcohol sales with great harms, with violence and with terrible things happening to patients in lots of areas, not just here in the hospital, but in the area of domestic violence.
Is the big issue here, though, as well, the culture of drinking? Because you mentioned domestic violence. People can still obviously buy alcohol. Those incidents don't stop. Is it the culture and binge drinking culture we see in Australia a lot? Would that be worth tackling as a separate focus?
That's certainly a part of it, but there's very clear evidence that it's just the volume of alcohol. You could almost graph the increased sales, the increased consumption of alcohol with outcomes that are violent, with assaults and with injuries. So partly it's the way we consume alcohol, but even just the amount of alcohol, the units of alcohol sold and consumed. We've done a lot of work now in the public health arena here through the emergency department. We survey our patients, we look at how they came to be where they are, and alcohol is a very strong factor, and it's a linear predictor of how patients will fare.
What about the lockout time that's probably got the most attention, 1:30 a.m, where you could not get into another venue? Do you accept that Sydney, big international city, that having that sort of curfew just makes a mockery of nightlife for a lot of people and a lot of visitors in particular?
I think mockeries are really strange. It's not a term I would use. I think certainly you've got some time to find a venue and you've got some time to be in a venue. 1:30 to me doesn't seem terribly early, but some folk might view it that way. I think clearly we have different views on this, and 1:30 to me is not unreasonable. And at the moment, talking about changing the 3 a.m. closure to any time later than that, we'd be very concerned about that.
Do you accept there has been an impact on business at the same time, that there's a lot more shop fronts seemingly empty and shuttered than there used to be in some of the areas that have had these lockout laws applied in?
I think the economic aspects aren't really my area of expertise. And anecdotally, we heard many things, including that there's been a resurgence of other kinds of nightlife. So it's something that is open to interpretation. The health aspects, the information, the data we have on health, that's very strong. We have very strong evidence in that area. I'm not so sure that the evidence in the economic impact is of the same level. It's not actually my real area.
So from here, where do you go? You'll see how this change, I suppose, we're assuming it will happen, will impact, keep collecting statistics and keep campaigning?
We'll be talking, obviously, to government. We would like to think that our voice is being heard. We'd like to think that government weights our input strongly. We have no other agenda except the well-being of our patients. We have great concerns about going back to where we were before these laws came into effect. I was here and I know exactly what it would be like if that happened again, and that would be a terrible situation to find ourselves in. So we would maintain our conversation with government, and we would hope that they would be very thoughtful in what they actually did next in response to these recommendations.
Dr. Preisz, thanks for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.